Thank you to our audience for joining today's discussion on how to energize claims operations with streamlined automation and AI. And a big thank you to Reuters Events for hosting this discussion. I'm Michael Fidel, co-managing director of InsurTech Ohio. We are a community of industry thought leaders and insurance professionals cultivating relationships that drive talent, partnerships, and capital. I'm joined by three fantastic panelists today. A quick introduction: Mark Phillips, AVP, Workers' Comp Claims at Amerisure; Dan Moore, SVP, Claims Shared Services at CNA Insurance; and Nicole Nevelis, Global Senior Director of Go-to-Market Strategy at Verint. I want to encourage, before I give our panelists an opportunity to provide a bit more of a detailed introduction and talk a little bit about their passion for today's topic, I just want to encourage those attending today live to please take advantage of the Q&A feature on Zoom. Share any questions that you have that you want our panelists to address. I will do my very best throughout today's discussion to pay attention and pull in questions as they come in. To the panelists, thanks again for joining. Nicole, I'll turn to you. I want to give you first an opportunity to provide maybe a bit more information on your background and share some details on, again, your passion for today's discussion.
Thank you very much, Michael. My name is Nicole Nevelis, and my passion for today is about taking technology and transforming operations areas. And how can we make it easier, especially in a time where technology has automated so much of the simple things, that what we really need are people that we can help and enable to deal with things on more of a soft skill level. How can we give them the skills to interact, not just at a customer level, but also at an employee level as well? Prior to my career in the tech industry, I worked in business consulting and spent over a decade in financial services operations.
Thanks, Nicole. Dan.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. So Dan Moore, obviously with CNA Insurance, as Michael mentioned. I'm passionate about the topic today because I firmly believe that, one, insurance is a noble industry, and within that industry, claims plays a very special part, right? It's where the promise comes to life. It's where the paper becomes real. We help to restore, lives, businesses, build confidence in enabling folks to move forward. And so having an energized operation that support that from a claim standpoint, being able to, facilitate better execution of that promise and fulfillment of that promise through technology, and the advances that technology are bringing certainly are a key part of that. And so really excited about how that's coming along. And the power that it gives us to be able to respond more effectively and efficiently to our customers' needs and solving those needs. I've spent about 20 years in the industry, a variety of claims and operations and underwriting roles, and excited to be here today.
Excited to have you as well, Dan. And Mark.
Yes, thank you, Michael. Mark Phillips with Amerisure Insurance. I've been involved in the claims side of insurance for about 15 plus years now. And my passion really lies is, kind of to piggyback off what Dan says, is that we are typically on the claim side dealing with folks on their worst day. And how do we, in the most efficient way possible, one, get their life back on track, but get the claims process started so that there's a flow of information, for all parties, and all parties are updated as close in real time as we can. That's a huge challenge in the industry, and making sure that everybody knows kind of what is going on, what the next steps are, and where we look for efficiencies for our staff and the ease of doing business.
Thanks, Mark. So we're going to dive right in here. I want to set the table, if we can, around the current state, in your opinion, of, relatively speaking, both AI and automation. I'll give a bonus star to anyone who might take somewhat of an attempt to also try to delineate where they feel like AI is starting to infiltrate from an automation point of view. But we've got some time to further unpack the technicalities around AI in today's discussion. So taking a step back, what are just some of the current processes where you feel like AI and automation are starting to actually, in a very practical sense, impact the business that you're working on? Nicole, if you don't mind, I'll come back and start with you.
Wonderful. AI is augmenting the ability for operations teams to make smarter decisions faster. So a claims processor or an adjudicator can make a decision that makes the time faster for them to do what they need to do. That thinking through, what are my possibilities, that allows a claim to be processed not just faster, but it also with more accuracy, which is important. It provides less rework as well as less flowback work of customer complaints. AI is also something that can help someone navigate difficult conversations. So if you are using things like knowledge management, real-time coaching, you can get that notification that you may want to change your tone, or you may want to, here's a suggestion of how you could shift the narrative. AI really helps it helps people to do their jobs better. It's about augmenting, not replacing. Automation comes in and helps simplify the task. It takes away the rudimentary work. For example, when we think about managing a team, instead of spending our time trying to bring all of the data together about productivity or backlog, let's bubble up that information for the manager in order to allow them to focus on having meaningful conversations, speed their time to decision making. That's where we look at automation as replacing those activities that in the past took quite a bit of time.
Yeah, that was a fantastic response. And thank you for taking on the challenge of trying to delineate a little bit of how you see opportunities for improvement in processes that are stemming from AI versus what you classify as automation. That was excellent. Dan, I'll come to you. Thoughts on ways in which you're seeing impact of both AI and automation?
Sure, absolutely. Well, I think first off, from an automation standpoint, there's been a lot of effort and work over a number of years for folks to automate what I'll call very simplistic processes, right? And so you've got automation of report generation, you've got automation of data processes, and in many cases, we've been moving up the complexity scale, automation of very simple claims, things like that, right? And as we move forward into more complex components, I think that's where you'll start to see more of a support from an AI standpoint. Nicole's absolutely right around kind of augmenting the expertise of our claim professionals. We view AI as a co-pilot, as a support function to basically enhance the expertise of our claim professionals. And then as well, provide an ability to give insights to automation. So as we move up that complexity scale, the use of AI allows us to now move into a little bit more complex, a little more decision-oriented automation. And so that's where I think that evolution comes along. We're still in early days for the more complex stuff as we move forward. The simpler stuff obviously has had a longer period of time to go, but you see that kind of distinction and that transition up that complexity scale. But really, long term for us, in addition to enabling some of that automation, it really is around enabling the expertise and decision support power for our claim professionals. Each claim professional or operations operative on our team has work in front of them. They also have a large pending, and as well that we have a portfolio as an organization to be able to see the insights that are generated, not just from the work in front of you, but also the work that's in your pending in the broader organization, gives you insights and intelligence that you wouldn't be able to get on your own, and enables better decisions, more impactful choices of what you work on today, and how we actually move forward to resolve the situation on behalf of our clients in an efficient, effective, and customer-centric way. So I think it all plays hand in hand as we go forward.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot to unpack, and I appreciate the way you summarized the impact points, because there are quite a few. Mark, we've touched on several ways in which AI and automation are impacting businesses, but still would very much like to get your sense of how you see the current impact playing out on processes that exist today.
Sure. Thank you, Michael. Yeah, Dan and Nicole definitely did a great job of summarizing where we're currently at. Something that, as far as AI goes, that we're trying to figure out how we utilize it on the claim side is more of like a triage. Like, how do we triage if that call comes in, if somebody's voice has a, there's certain inflection or tone, and help our staff prioritize, obviously, the ones that maybe need to, take priority over the others. So that it doesn't then become a bigger issue, which then has the downstream effect of then, lost dollars and ALA dollars out the door. And more on the operations side, kind of what to, again, piggyback off what Dan mentioned, is that, like, how do we gain efficiencies for the processes that we've been doing manually? And not only that, but remembering that downstream effect is if we automate, this particular piece of, the process, what other areas do we then have to look at for other areas across the organization?
Yeah. There's already a question coming in about fully automating claims, and I think it's maybe a little premature to go right after it, but we've touched on in almost every response augmentation. So let's go right after it, at least a little bit. We might dive deeper later in the conversation, but Dan, I'm going to come to you first, just to mix up the order out of the gate. Where do you kind of foresee the current line between what should and shouldn't be fully automated from a claims point of view?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And honestly, it's one that will probably be explored for a fairly lengthy period of time, right? I think, the cases that I think are from a straightforward perspective that are kind of out there are what I'll call, certainly anything in like the physical damage, kind of, easily quantifiable, no liability kinds of questions where it's really quite straightforward. Think about, physical damage auto, for example. You've got most of the estimatic platforms out there who are able to create an estimate with photos and, the information. And with that information, you can essentially pay a claim, right? Particularly if it's single party, for first party, very straightforward. I think where you start to get more complexity, and where I think the regulators are going to play an important role. I think we're all going to have a very interesting conversation when you start to move up that complexity ladder. The thing that I would say there is as we move up that complexity ladder, introducing more complex property claims, introducing, questions associated with liability, things like that. You start to have a conversation then, I think, around, well, are there components of a larger, more complex claim that you can automate and go straight through with? And I think in those scenarios, that will be the next step, as opposed to fully automating a full stack of all complexities. But you already see it today, where some of the more simplistic, straightforward, you can see it a little bit in some of like the med only, no lost time work comp scenarios. It's essentially a first aid type scenario, physical damage, those types of things. Those are ripe for straight through processing. Full automation and I think like I say, the regulatory aspect is one of those that I think we'll have to weigh heavily on how we go forward. You don't want to have to be fighting against an AI bot for understanding how your claim is adjudicated as you move forward.
Thanks, Dan. Mark, any experience in like the complete automation of a claims workflow? Anything that you would want to add to the discussion?
Yeah, I think it goes kind of, AI and automation go hand in hand in that, because you're essentially needing to build out a decision tree within your system. And not only from like the claim perspective, but like what Dan mentioned, like the regulatory aspect, is, claims, especially in workers' compensation, the 47 states that offer, the non-monopolistic states have all kinds of they're all different rules and regulations. And then how do you build that into the decision tree, as well as delivering that level of service that we're selling as insurance carriers? That's the biggest challenge. And I think that's where the industry we have to figure that piece out before we can ever really fully automate, even though some of those more simplistic claims.
Yeah. And Nicole, both curious for your perspective on how you respond when folks bring up the idea even of a fully automated claims experience, as well as you mentioned augmentation in your initial kind of introduction, and I'm kind of curious in areas where you don't see, potentially just guessing, that the full automation of a claims operations is practical. How should we really be thinking about AI and automation in a way that maximizes the use of existing team members?
Both Dan and Mark made very good points about augmentation and streamlining certain tasks. I think many of us have been on the phone with an IVR, which is an automated response when you call in. And most of us can identify with that IVR not meeting our needs, not having that empathy, and becoming highly frustrated. So automation, what it doesn't necessarily do is understand the context of an interaction. It doesn't understand the context that might impact a decision being made about that claim. It doesn't have empathy, and these are things that do make a difference in making that decision. When we use automation and AI, what that does is it frees up the time so that an employee or an agent can take more time to have a quality interaction and make sure that the result is good, not just for the end member or customer, but also the best result for the insurance carrier as well. We sometimes lose ourselves in the sight of quicker, faster, and let's churn out more. The reality is many of us have been listening to, we're going to automate and get rid of the people for most of our careers. And I was at Connected Claims out in Chicago in October, and most people agreed that is a great vision. We're still filled with a high number of employees. It's the work has shifted. I had the pleasure of speaking with Ellen Carney last year from Forrester, and one of her research findings indicated a few years ago, the portion of people doing complex knowledge work was around 40%, but today it's grown, and that balance is now around 60%. We're seeing the impact of automation allowing us to really address these more complex claims and engagements that we're coming into.
Thanks, Nicole. Dan, your thoughts on other critical areas where AI and automation can play an important part in improving people?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think Nicole's point around the augmentation and the importance of the empathy and connection is huge. I see as well, just and we think about how do we leverage these tools. One, I think it is in that decision support. It's making higher quality decisions. It's improving the expertise. It's augmenting that expertise, right? It's one of the things that we're working on currently is using AI to help focus the attention and expertise of our claim professionals on the next best action, right? And so as we think about, like, look, every day you walk in, and all of us walk in, right, to a bunch of emails, a bunch of to-dos, and how do you know exactly which of those might be the most impactful? Because let's face it, 80-90% of the activities that you do every day don't have a whole lot of impact. They're just kind of keeping the wheels moving, right? There's a handful, right, of those activities that when you actually execute on those critical decisions, those critical actions that actually have a quantum impact on moving the most important things forward. And so as I see, one, the opportunity that Nicole talks about to kind of take off a lot of that routine and automate it, that's certainly one of those. But the other piece is to kind of help our folks understand what are those really critical big pieces that if they focus their time and effort there, they'll see a quantum improvement in the outcome for our customers, our distribution partners, and for the organization, and as we move forward. And I think that actually applies whether you're talking about claim professionals or you're talking about underwriting professionals. That really is across the landscape, right, of what we're doing as insurance carriers, and that's one of the, I think, the areas and the opportunities for those two to come together.
Mark, in the same vein, very curious for any examples that you want to point out on other opportunities for AI and automation to create an impact. But if I could, I want to interject that when we started the discussion, we titled this panel as increasing the energy around operations. And so if you can, feel free to share any examples of what that might look like, within an individual process that you think could have a tremendous impact based on AI and automation coming in and improving it, but also, or feel free to even take it more holistically. What is a more energized state around claims operations look like to you? Very curious for your thoughts.
That's a great question, Michael. You definitely caused me to think on this Tuesday morning, but I definitely think, for folks to be energized about the claim process is there is a ton of information and data flowing in and out of a carrier on, every day of every minute of the day. And how do we make the folks in our industry, one, their job more efficient? And easier is probably not the right word, but getting rid of those manual, like Dan was mentioning, non-impactful tasks that they have to do, so we can spend our time really, reaching out to our customers or agents, and essentially making sure that they have the best process that can be, that can be done with the information that we have, and making the best informed decision. And traditionally, insurance jobs have been run by, Dan mentioned, by task, by like your diary, by these things that are very, I hate to say, static in nature. Is you set an activity or a diary out for 60 days from now, and then you look at it that day, and a lot of stuff has probably happened in those 60 days. But how do we, in those 60 days, how are we getting alerts to our staff to make sure that, hey, you need to work on this today, or this needs to be done by now because some sort of warning or a trigger has shown up, in whether it be a medical record or a renewal is coming up, so that you're not relying on these kind of static dates to kind of drive your work. And I think that's where some of the energy will come, because folks will have to be flexible, and the skills that we have maybe looked for before in traditional insurance jobs, it may need to be shifted, like Nicole was mentioning earlier, where they're a little bit more flexible. They have those soft skills, because the technical piece and some of the rules that drive insurance can hopefully be built within more of the AI automation type aspect of work.
Yeah, I really appreciate where we've already gone in this discussion. I think that the idea of walking to a desk, whether you're at home or in an office, and feeling like you have support in making the right choice for having impact that day is a feeling that anyone who's worked for any number of years in any career should very much, especially at a desk, should relate to. Because the worst days are those that sometimes feel like they just came and went. They're not even the harder days necessarily, but they're the tougher ones to swallow because you're just not sure what you actually accomplished. So that's a very interesting kind of takeaway that I think we've already come to in the first 25 minutes, and I appreciate that. Nicole, I want to come to you and stay high level for a moment. What does a more energized state around claims operations look like to you?
An energized state is one that sets the people that are doing the work, the people that are managing others up for success. It's about being able to empower them with what they need. Back to what Mark just said, how do I feel like I'm making a difference? Am I making an impact? Because you feel valued. In automation, by removing the manual tasks, by removing the mystery, for a manager, how am I organizing and prioritizing all this work? Well, I don't feel satisfaction if I'm too busy trying to herd cats and take data from all of my disparate and disconnected systems just to have a holistic view of what is going on. How do I know people are focusing on work? And that's great, they're focusing on the work. Are they being productive, and are they doing it in the right way? And are they working on the right item? It's that cohesive view to give that manager in real time so they can focus more on making strategic decisions on how to keep the work moving along. It's interesting when we talk about automation, because we bring in a digital coworker to do a task in the process. That digital coworker may be dependent on receiving their work on people doing steps before it. And those people, depending on their rate of work, that flow coming into your digital coworker, that digital coworker, it could do 1,000 items an hour. But if there's backlog coming into it and they're only receiving 80 items, then that bot is only doing 80 items an hour. Conversely, when you take that bot and they're pumping out 1,000 items an hour, but the next part downstream is people, and those people are only capable of doing 80 items an hour, then that bot is only as fast as the slowest people in the chain. So it comes back to removing that frustration that happens when we feel like we're behind the 8 ball and looking at how can I empower my workforce and how can I best load balance my workforce by giving them the right items at the right time and freeing up the right people to do the work.
Thanks, Nicole. Dan, also want to give you an opportunity. Talk us through your definition, more or less, of what an energized state might look like. And if you could, transition to sharing with us a challenge to that future.
Yeah, excellent question. And certainly, I think Nicole raises a lot of valid points there. I think for me, when I think about an energized operation, right? It is about engagement. It's about one where it's not a dictation relative to what we're going to do, but it's a collaborative effort by those who are setting a direction and a vision, and those who are participating in it at all levels and helping to figure out what's the best way to go forward. When we think about the most energized organizations, the most energized operations, they're ones where folks feel like they have a stake in how we get things done, how we execute, what's important, what are our priorities. We may all agree on the direction that our objective is X, but then being able to have some autonomy on how we get to X, and being able to craft something with our colleagues that reflects who we are and how, as an organization, the things that we value. To me, that really helps define an energized state. It's one where, from a customer standpoint, we're passionate about our customers. We're passionate about, honoring the promise that we make as insurance professionals, and that we're there to fulfill as claims professionals. And so for me, that really where that is. And I think, automation and AI play important roles in that, right? We've talked a lot about how it frees, how it creates that space and that capacity, but for folks to bring their full selves and their kind of, some extra room to do those things that are more meaningful, more interesting, right, as opposed to the routine. But I think as well, just allowing our folks to have access to tools and create approaches that leverage that to brainstorm solutions for how would they want to, what tasks would they automate? Where do they see the bottlenecks? What are the pain points? Where do they see, where do they struggle with some of that inbox and knowing what to focus on, leveraging some of their experience and allowing them and empowering them to use tools like decision support and AI tools to help understand where they want to focus and how they want to focus to move the agenda forward. All lead in my mind to an energized state, and one where our customers, our trading partners, and our internal partners can feel a difference relative to how we're operating and executing on the promise of claims.
Thanks, Dan. Mark, let's stay on the topic for a second of collaboration. A question's come in about how this group sees operations and IT collaborating around these tools. Best practices, thoughts on what is working well, or how these conversations, even from the idea phase to distinguishing priorities around them, how do you see that play out across these departments?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's probably in reality one of the most important things in this whole process, and probably one of the things that is also one of the biggest challenges is I think one of the, you have to make sure that both groups are aligned and kind of know what's expected and setting realistic expectations. And making sure that, the sprints are aligned, that everybody has the availability and the time to do stuff. And kind of what Dan was just mentioning is the prioritization of those projects. Because, as whether it be a project owner or whatever role you're holding, we always want it to move quickly. And but understanding and really talking through up front what not only the downstream implications are, how do we push this out, how do we properly utilize it. It's great to move quickly, but I would also, some of the experience that we've had is it's better to move in more of a realistic time frame, so you are not rushing something out to your staff, and making sure that all parties are aware of what is going on, and making sure if there are system limitations that is kind of worked out up front, so we're not spending the time and resources only kind of getting to the halfway point and realizing that there's an issue then at that point.
Thanks, Mark. Nicole, collaboration is obviously huge if you're trying to augment team members. How do you approach that topic?
It's critical to have all of the players in the room, not just IT, but also the business. And it helps them understand what the needs are. Often there's a perception by IT that this is the way they should be using technology, and this is how they're going to use it. On the other side, the business has this expectation of this is how IT is going to solve all of our problems. And each party does not understand the limitations. And by getting in the room together, they can have those conversations so that everybody's on the same page of what kind of value technology can create. And if we take that a step back, sometimes the business asks for technology that perhaps isn't going to create the value they perceive that it will. A great example is, I need another bot. I need more RPA because John Smith over in another team, he just got 20 bots. At some point, doing and investing in the same things is going to get you a minimal return and impact on your business. But by working together and collaboratively, we can talk about what tools do we not leverage within our organization today could provide us even bigger impact, especially as the engagement capacity gap grows between what customer demands are and the number of skilled people, especially with those soft skills that are available to do that work.
And Nicole, staying with you for just a second, what would you say is the biggest challenge to all of this intended optimization?
The biggest challenge is throwing technology over to the business and expecting the value to be created. It is a transformation process. And when you think about operations, the business processes that have been in place may not fit hand in hand with how the technology works. Getting value means not doing the same thing you've been doing and trying to fit the square peg in a round hole. You have to ask yourself, with this technology, based on different roles in the organization, what do you need to do on a intraday, daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly basis? What are the conversations that need to be had between the employees, the frontline leaders, and the directors? Because those conversations are different. How are analysts looking at data across the board and distilling information up to senior leadership? I would say the other thing to consider is, how is this impacting the employees? And being able to use change management to position it to them in terms of, here's how it is benefiting you, that what's in it for me. For example, there are tools that will give you real-time visibility to your productivity. And those kinds of tools take away the mystery of, am I one-on-one? Am I going to be told by my manager I'm not being productive, or I need to raise the bar? And just like with my personal tracking device here, I know in real time if I've gotten my steps in for the day. When you provide people with insight in real time on their productivity, they now can come to the conversation. It's a more energized conversation. You can teach a manager, how do you talk about data to drive an outcome? How do you lift someone up? At the same time, the employee can come to the table knowing exactly how they perform and identifying, here's what I can do differently, or Mr. Manager or Ms. Manager, here's what you can do to support me. I need help here. It's really thinking it through beyond, I'm putting a new piece of tech in.
Thanks, Nicole. Dan, want to transition and get your perspective on both ROI as well as adoption. So let's start with just, is the ROI there for AI and automation? Are we already seeing that return?
Yeah, I think first off, it's not every case, right? There are certain cases, you can certainly say it's a case by case scenario where the insights that are gleaned or the capabilities that are enabled by leveraging AI, in some cases there are, the test and the proof of concept is generating a very positive, clear ROI. In some cases that we've tested out and that I'm seeing, frankly, it's not quite there, right? The juice isn't worth the squeeze. And I think that kind of goes a little back to Nicole's point. It's not just about putting something in and expecting a return. You have to recognize that the reality is each of these kind of use cases is a little bit independent, and we got to be selective and judicious about where we apply the technology, where we have the biggest impact. Sometimes it's foundational. You have to also recognize that some of the things may be foundational, but I would say right now it's, from our experience, is very much a case by case as opposed to an across the board ubiquitous scenario.
Overall, it sounds like the needle's moving, though. Do you feel like then that the adoption is following suit appropriately, or is it in any way falling behind what it needs to be?
Yeah, I think one, as with all things, right? There's more people talking about it than are doing it, right? At least successfully anyway. Which is I think always, if I think back to the beginning of my 20 years in insurance, I remember attending a presentation about automated first notice of loss through telematics, right? That was 20 years ago that people were talking about that and saying they were doing it, and here we are 20 years later. Telematics has taken bigger root. I think AI is similar. The hype curve is always a little advanced. But that said, adoption is interest is high, adoption is there. A lot of testing is happening. I think a lot of use cases are happening, point solutions are happening, and I think folks are appropriately identifying and looking for opportunities. I think that's going to continue to accelerate the race for how we use AI, and even thinking now, in terms of like generative AI and other capabilities that are now fast coming, that there's going to be an acceleration in how we leverage that. One of the challenges that for a lot of folks still exist, you still have a lot of folks who have data locked up in legacy systems and have not done the foundational work necessary to be on a more modern stack. Even if you've put a modern cover over a legacy stack, many of those limitations still pull through. The data is often still locked or not as effectively available to these processes and these technologies. And so I think there's for some folks, it's going to be a conversation around, have we kept pace with the rest of the changes that are happening? Have we made the foundational investments to enable some of these strategic investments in AI and automation and other capabilities like that? And I think that's a conversation that's happening a lot across a lot of different companies. At the same time, others are having the conversation: how do we now leverage those investments that we did make and move the ball forward?
Thanks, Tim. Mark, there's a lot to unpack when you think about return on investment. That's obviously the net effect of everything that any company is trying to do in terms of these investments, is to find some return. So still very curious for you to add to this conversation. How do you see the ROI at this point, and what sort of challenges do you see as important to tackle in order to improve the overall return?
Yeah, great question. Thank you, Michael. So you're always going to have an ROI. You're going to have your hard savings, the stuff that we can quantify. But what about also like the soft savings that are maybe open to interpretation? And I think the biggest challenge for not only in this industry, but probably across the board, is how do we make sure that the parties involved are all looking at it the same way? And then what is our expectation of our ROI? I mean, is it one of those things to where the organization wants to see an ROI of X, by year one, and if it's not done by that, then they're going to move on. But I also think you have to practice some patience with as this automation is built up, because you could switch from a new platform, a new streamlined process, as often as you want, as often as you have resources. But do you have the patience to let those hard savings on the ROI play out? And sometimes, it's kind of funny. In traditionally claims, we talk about being agile and flexible, but sometimes those savings in the ROI, there's a lag, and you kind of have to let it build up till you really see the true value. So I think one of the considerations is, as long as everybody that is involved with the project or within the organization that has a stake in it can all be on the same page and practice that patience. I think that's one of the biggest challenges. Especially as like Dan mentioned, there's all kinds of stuff coming out in connected claims and InsurTech conferences, to where you could be easily swayed one way or the other and see all these opportunities, but you can't get ahead of it. You got to make sure and have that patience kind of throughout the process.
Definitely. Nicole, I want to preserve some time. We're about 17 minutes out from the end of our discussion today. And I want to make sure that, to at least some extent, the 3 or 4 of us are able to identify some of the specific AI and automation tools that we're most excited about, that we think are definitely worth mentioning. So let's start there. Do you have any sort of favorite tools at the moment that you can share an experience around?
Yes, my favorite tools are broader platform applications that are cloud-based, that really break down not just the data silos, but organization silos. Being able to take all of that data and bring it in to, for example, an engagement data hub, so we can actually triangulate and gain new insights, eliminate blind spots within an organization. So my heart is always with the operations team, because operations tends to be the last that gets thought of with customer engagement. And the reality is, if we can't in operations deliver on the product or service that was provided to the customer, then that is where customer engagement can fall down. You can have numerous chatbots, you can have numerous quality scripts, you can train your contact center employees, you can train customer service employees, you can provide self-service. At the end of the day, the work gets done in operations. So empowering an operations team to uncover those blind spots that they have and allows them to work more efficiently and effectively to better serve the customer. Those are the types of tools that I'm deeply interested in. At the same time, any kind of AI or automation that can empower, make any employee somebody that you can leverage in the organization is also of deep value. Once you have people working in a way to focus on claims, the next step in that strategy is looking at, if I'm going to share employees across different departments, then how do I make them feel confident that they can process these things? So when you can provide just-in-time pop-ups to remind somebody that this is a key step in this process. You're a new employee. Let me help you feel confident that this is what you need to do, the next best step. There's knowledge management solutions that augment the things that help us organize and prioritize the work. And these types of things will create consistent knowledge across the organization. So just like the disparate systems or the old green screen systems, there's a long tenure of employees in operations. And sometimes the knowledge we have is tribal knowledge that changes over time, and providing consistent knowledge set to people is very much key. So it is the automation and AI just that supports us being more intelligent in how we work with our people and how we are allowing our employees to be successful.
Thanks, Nicole. Dan, your favorite AI or automation tool?
Yeah, tough to pick just one. I mean, I think there's a couple quick use. I mean, maybe I would say, one, there are some tools that we've built in-house that are that I would look at very favorably, tools that do look at propensity modeling and help us to identify cases for early intervention on the operations and claims side of the house. Those are obviously things that are yielding results. I would also look at some of the work we're doing with some outside partners with respect to provider analysis and identifying the best providers for partnering. Some of the litigation analysis that we're doing, those are obviously great use cases. SIU is another great one where leveraging industry data for anti-fraud gives organizations not just insight into their own book, but kind of leverages the power of the broader industry, because fraud hurts real people. And so to the extent that we can do that together, then the other pieces that I would highlight, obviously in our operations space, we've got some more tried and true technologies, RPA and other things like that are really taking on a lot of heavy lifting and allowing for folks to take on move off a lot of that repetitive activity. But then for some of the rest of the group, that the stuff we talked earlier about, like decision support capabilities, decision support tools, those are some of the ones that we're really excited about. We've seen some great results in my prior lives, and certainly as we're implementing here, we have opportunities as well to take real great strides in that, helping to create clarity for claims professionals and operations teams on what activities they should take and how to best free up and support their expertise to make the most empathetic and best outcome decisions they can. Those are the ones that are really getting the excitement from our team right now, and I'm looking forward to seeing those continue to mature and continue to have impact in organizations.
Thanks, Dan. And Mark, curious for any favorite tools that you're exploring.
Yeah, I think I mentioned it earlier, is kind of the triaging of events or calls or messages or folks just calling in or texting or emailing, and how do we route those calls, just like we're implementing, we preach right claim, right hands, so whether it be the task, the call, whatever interaction, making sure that we're getting those with the right people. Because one of the most frustrating, I think, parts about when, like Nicole was mentioning earlier, when you call into somewhere, whether it be a customer service line or whatever, if you get bounced around, and from there, that starts the interaction off on a bad foot. And so one of the exciting things that we're doing is kind of building in that decision tree of in triaging those calls and claims and how they get to the right person. And the other one I'd like to mention is the not only on the workers' comp side, but the liability side, is that you get huge, packets and documents of medical records and settlement demand packages. And how do we, if in the most efficient way possible, pull out keywords, pull out trigger events, pull out certain, trends that may be seen, not only on one specific claim, but, whether it be a certain attorney is, handling it a certain way, or like Dan mentioned earlier, provider analysis. And then how do we then make that part of that decision process for our staff, and it allows us to provide more, streamlined and quicker service to our agents and our policyholders, to ultimately get the best outcome.
Yeah, Mark, I'm glad you brought up records and documents. The entire insurance industry is built on effectively paper. Was hard copy, at least is mostly electronic now. But PDFs, sometimes handwritten, will lock down most of the data that we still use. That may or may not be true. I don't know what percentage, but it still feels like it's most of the data. So a couple of questions have come in all the way going back to the beginning of today's session about document processing and the capabilities that you're seeing of getting information off of documents, regardless of how we might use it from there. So Nicole, I'll come to you. What are you seeing in the document space? If anything has stood out as impressive, would love to know about it.
What I've seen in the document space is the ability to look at what is on that document and pick that information up and paste it into your operating system, so that you aren't having somebody have to type that out. And I see that quite a bit with being able to take information that just you can't populate it, but you're spending the time and effort to do that, and transitioning that into a form so you don't have to, so you can eliminate those human errors. And I think that harkens back to the fact that if you can prevent an error from happening in the first place, you know, to prevent that call from coming in and having to do that triage work. I see that quite a bit. I also see that there's several different types of ways documents can come in. So what you may see is you still have fax images that come in. You have scans coming in from different operations, and these are all different within the package that somebody receives. So looking at those documents, and even trying to figure them out, how do I interpret the information? This looks different. I've never seen this before. What do I do with this? So that extra soft skills that we keep talking about, being able to give people that knowledge so they can read it and assess it quickly and then move on from it.
Thanks, Nicole. And Dan, your thoughts on document processing?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think, for the last couple of years now, there's been a lot of folks who have been trying to take the kind of the older OCR capabilities that existed in structured documents and move that to more unstructured documents. You've seen a lot of technologies and vendors entering that space. Have personally run several proof of concepts on that. I think there are some great and implemented some solutions along the way. I think there are some capability. I think there are some clear use cases. I think there's still some opportunities for some of those documents or some of those capabilities to match the complexity of the documents that are generated, particularly the unstructured or more challenging documents. But it is a great capability to help digitize a lot of non-digital assets and effectively move that information into kind of our data marts, data lakes, and cloud storage, to be able to, one, be acted upon operationally, which is always a key consideration, is can we actually execute on the information, but at the same time also free that up for use in data analytics, AI, and other capabilities. So it's an area that's grown, and it will continue to grow, I think, and refine over the next few years.
Thanks, Dan, for adding that. Dan, I'm going to stay with you though, because we're probably down to one last question, and I want to transition to thinking about how automation intends on eliminating work that is repetitive. Ultimately, what we, at least as an industry, it feels like are intending to leave our team members, our human being team members, with are the more complex, more variable elements of processing claims. So I'm curious to kind of close us out. Want to ask each of you to share your thoughts on how you think that reality will change the management and expectations of team members as the work performed by humans becomes potentially more variable.
Yeah, an interesting question, right? Obviously, I think it puts greater accountability on managers to provide effective training, effective development. I'm really excited about the power of the decision support tools and AI to help combat the graying, if you will, of the insurance industry, the departure of a lot of our significant knowledge base via retirement and other things in the next 10 plus years. I think being able to encapsulate that information into decision support and AI goes a long way to helping ensure the next generation of claims professionals has access to that expertise, is able to leverage it, to learn from it. But I think it will be incumbent on managers to really spend a lot more time developing, training the next generation, and then also changing how we, and I think, look, this transition's been underway for a while, but changing how we manage folks away from kind of looking at stick counts and that towards a more holistic view of how we look at what's the objective, how did we accomplish the objective, and allowing a little more autonomy in how folks achieve that objective, as long as we have a shared outcome. And that's, I think, how folks will be changing over the next couple of years.
Thanks, Dan. And Mark, how do you see the ongoing change in managing team motivation and just teamwork?
So I think Dan hit the nail on the head. It's about allowing the managers to encourage their folks to, improve their strategic thinking. And so they're not bogged down by the process and tasks that have to be done. But how do they encourage their staff to take that next step, or teach them the skills that will be successful in how they think about a process or an outcome? And then how do they get from point X to Z? How do they get there with skipping over Y, and where Y might be that task that has to be done? And I think done are the days of managing by reports and showing your folks Excel spreadsheets, but how can we leverage the data that we have to show them the performance is on track or it needs to improve? But overall performance management, I think it'll help as well.
Thanks, Mark. Nicole, your thoughts on how this changes the career path of individuals trying to be a positive force inside of claims operations?
Both Dan and Mark touched about the human element and how we're humanizing technology. It's about people, process, and technology. And there's the popular Maya Angelou quote of, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but they won't forget how you made them feel. And the technology that frees up people and allows them to focus more on the human side of it allows them to engage in interactions using data-driven information. It allows them to now start to focus on, how do I maximize the power of people? How do I get the best out of them? How do I feel fulfilled? It's on analytical information versus more anecdotal information. That sets the organization up to be more successful. It opens up opportunities that you can help retain your skilled team members as they move throughout your organization. That's ultimately what we want, is we want to have happy employees that feel fulfilled and they want to stay on board. So understanding how you can use technology to amplify the value of your workforce is where all of the automation and AI is going. It's not replacing people, it's lifting them up.
Thanks, Nicole, for closing us out. Dan, Mark, Nicole, really appreciate you taking the time. I thought we really talked through some great takeaways. Want to thank Reuters Events as well for hosting today. And to our audience, really appreciate the participation. Everyone have a great day.